Hi, Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Hi, I'm sorry I'm a few minutes late. I was dealing with a situation, but I'm all yours now.
no problem. How are
Okay.
you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm really good. Where am I reaching you? What part of the world are you in?
Oh, I'm just in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Okay. I heard recently that the prettiest marathon is in Minneapolis. And
Okay,
I think it's happening this weekend. Does that sound familiar?
I think so. Yeah,
I have I have a friend who's coming to Minneapolis with her two kids for Mother's Day, Sunday,
right.
to run with her kids because
Okay,
just because Minneapolis's run is supposed to be beautiful. So, yay.
thanks for
Thanks.
willing to do this.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And you're wearing a Sailor Moon t-shirt.
Yeah,
Very nice. It looks like it might be sort of vintage.
it's just the style. Yeah, but I think that was the goal.
Oh, I see. Okay. I like that. Very nice.
Yeah,
So
so I could just jump around then with your career.
sure. Tell me something first of all, if you don't mind. So, who is your podcast sort of focused on, or who's your audience? Who are your listeners generally?
I mean, I do live action actors and music industry people too, but my predominant focus is voice actors for anime and video games.
Okay, great. All right. Well, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
So the first thing I can ask is, do you have a special story of how you got into ACTRA?
And to ACTRA, the union, well,
Yeah.
it's not officially a union. I guess it's an association, but um, well, it goes way back. So I don't know what the requirements are now, but basically, and I'll try to keep this brief. I started working in community theater when I was a kid because my mom took me to an audition and it was really fun. And then I stuck around for singing and dancing classes through a group in Calgary, Alberta called the Young Canadians of the Calgary Stampede. So I got some training. And then I went to university, but in the summers I would go to the Banff School of Fine Arts, which is in the Rocky Mountains. And I received some excellent training there too, all on scholarships, I have to say, because my family couldn't have afforded it otherwise. So I was very fortunate. And then out of that Banff experience, I was offered my first professional acting job in the theater. And that led to my union membership in the Canadian Actors Equity Association for theater. Um, after that, after I'd worked in theater in Alberta for a while, I moved to Toronto and I got an agent and I started to accumulate, they were called actor credits. So I wasn't really an actor member, but I would audition for a commercial, for example, and if I got the job, I'd get a credit towards ACTRA. And I think if I recall, I needed about six professional jobs to sort of prove that I was worthy to be a member of that association. So, to the best of my recollection, that's what it required, sort of this apprenticeship period, building up the credits and then being allowed to pay the dues, but also reaping the benefits of being part of that collective.
I know that you later on in the 90s that you did live in Los Angeles for a while, but did you have any initial aspiration to like immediately go there?
I growing up, I never aspired to be in the arts in this way, to be an actor, or now I'm a writer and a director as well. And I think it's partly because I didn't know anybody who did this professionally. So it just kind of wasn't on my radar. I was planning to go to law school and we had done this project in junior high school and we were fighting for justice. And I thought, that's awesome. And now that I say that to you, I'm thinking, well, I suppose as Sailor Moon, we fought for justice. As the Sailor Scouts, we fought for justice in a different way. But it was never my plan. Although I enjoyed it, I did it, as I said, as a hobby. And that led to the opportunities. And then once I finished my undergrad degree in university, I kind of had a talk with myself and said, you know, maybe put law school on hold for a bit and see if you like this theater thing, because now would probably be a good time to try it. So I gave it a try, and I was very fortunate. I have been very fortunate. I've worked a lot in this industry and stuck with it more or less. So very lucky.
I also don't know how much talk you've gotten about these at cons, but there's still a pretty big fan following too with Killer Party and Prom Night too.
No, I didn't know about that.
Yeah,
So what kind of conventions are those? Like for thrillers, horror films?
yeah.
No, I didn't know about that. That's kind of wild. That takes me back. That would be fun to go to. That would be a real blast from the past. Very fun. Have you
Well,
been to any of those conventions?
yeah, I mean, I've mostly gone to anime ones, but I've been to a couple horror ones here too. It's a totally different crowd, obviously.
Is there a lot of cosplay for the horror conventions as well?
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah.
What was your experience on both of those movies?
Wow. That was very early in my career. I think Killer Party came before Prom Night 2. I had a smaller role in Killer Party, but weirdly, it was shot a block from where I live today in this very old heritage part of Toronto, an artsy academic area called the Annex. And I think that building where Killer Party was shot, I think it's a rooming house now, but it's still a beautiful old building on a major street called Spadina in Toronto. Um, and I remember feeling like the newbie on the block because there were some more established actors who had come up from the States, and they were very talented. It was a good group, and but I was really just sort of testing the waters in it. I think that was probably my first big feature. And then it wouldn't have been too long after that that I did Prom Night 2. And that was quite satisfying artistically because I had a really fun role. And yeah, it was a bit of a, I guess, a shit disturber, if you will. And it was a great cast again, and mostly Canadian. Maybe it was all Canadian. And we really kind of gelled and enjoyed the experience, and had good direction with Bruce Pittman. And yeah, it was a really fun experience. I do remember one scary thing in that film was they were doing special effects for various things. And at one point, I don't remember the scene exactly, but it was in the washroom, and a hair or a hand dryer catches on fire, shoots some flames out. And I remember having my hair singed and my eyebrows and my eyelashes singed. Like I was really close to that flame. And that was actually scary. And it was a good lesson in that I never take special effects for granted anymore. I always like double, triple check with the people who are creating the special effects and make sure that they're safe, not just for me, but for my co-actors. And, especially if there are younger actors on the set, I try to just keep an eye out for everybody and make sure things are safe to the best of my ability anyway. But it was a fun shoot. I enjoyed it.
I think it was really cool too that Wendy Lyon is also in that movie, and then obviously you guys both ended up in Sailor Moon as like
Yeah.
her playing your mom too.
That's true. I hadn't thought of that. I guess, the longer you're in this industry, the more your paths cross with different people in different ways, and there are these intersections. And yeah, it's kind of ironic sometimes, but yeah. And she's a lovely person. I really enjoy Wendy.
This might be obvious too, but do you think that out of all the characters you played, do you relate the most to Serena?
I like to think of, I guess, all the characters I've played as different parts of me, or at least I access different parts of me to play these characters. And so I really truly don't have a favorite. I've had favorite working experiences, I suppose, and relationships with other cast members and creative people involved in the projects. But what I would say about Serena, and one of the things I loved about Serena, and I still love, is that she is so imperfect, as am I. So she was klutzy, she made mistakes, she kind of said things she wasn't supposed to say sometimes. She had good intentions and a big heart, but sometimes she just kind of screwed things up. And she had, I believe, at least what I tried to find in her was a great sense of humor about herself, kind of this self-deprecating humor, like, oh, I've done it again kind of thing. And I think that's one of the keys to life, actually, is to be able to laugh at ourselves and see our own foibles and and take the hits sometimes, but then pull ourselves up and maybe reach out to our friends, the Sailor Scouts in this case, and gather the strength to kind of go on and just keep doing our best. So those are the things that I love about Serena. Yeah.
I also don't know. I hadn't seen people ask you about this too much, but do you have any specific memory about doing the three movies for Sailor Moon?
I've got to say it. I don't want to disappoint you, but um, I mean, after 100 or so episodes and three movies, it's hard sometimes to pull it apart after 20 years and remember exactly what scene or what episode. So no, and I say whenever I do go to conventions, and I'm on a panel, I will say quite honestly that I am very sure that almost everybody in the audience knows more about the series than I do and knows more about specific storylines and the reference to mythology and um, people spend a lot of time on this, and I love that. I love learning about it. But when I was doing the series, I was more focused on the actual episode and the intention of the characters and the obstacles and the relationships. And I've learned a lot about the series since we recorded it, which is great. I love to keep learning. So I really appreciate the input that I get from the fans.
What about if it's the same case with recording the final, like the final battle episode with Queen Beryl, if that was anything special?
Well, I'm going to say that, when there are climaxes like that are emotional climaxes, what sticks with me is well, the emotional experience of being in that scene. And also with Sailor Moon, when she becomes Sailor Moon, my experience of her is that she's a very physical human being. Um, so as an actor, I tried to emulate her physicality as much as possible. So when she was kind of soaring through the universe, I was soaring through the universe. If she was jumping, I often jumped, much to the chagrin of the sound engineer Saul. But I tried to replicate her physical movement. So in sword fights, etc., and in battles, I gave it my all. I was really physical. And there are two reasons for that. There might be more, but the two main reasons are that when you move a certain way or use your body in a certain way, it affects your vocal production. Like you have more air or less air, or it's more forced, or it's a louder sound. And so I believe that the more physical I am and the more true I am to the physicality of the character I see on the screen, the more believable my voice will be. Oh, that's actually Sailor Moon, or that's actually Serena. Because as Serena, maybe she's eating crackers and making a mess, and you kind of you hear the mouth moving and how the tongue moves differently when there's food in the mouth and that kind of thing. So with Queen Beryl or the battles, I was in the battles. So physically, I was there, and I believe that affected my performance and my voice. And emotionally, I was there, and I believe that affected my my voice. I hope that it affected my voice because that is the major tool that we as voice actors use to tell a story. and we want to be as authentic as we can. So the essence of that, of kind of living the experience under imaginary circumstances, is what I would take away from that battle and the others. Yeah.
Do you have a single favorite of her transformation or call out call
Yeah, I
outs?
do. I do. I probably shouldn't pick a favorite, but I really love moon healing activation. And I love it partly because I love the message of healing, and partly because when I have had the opportunity to speak to Sailor Moon fans, I have heard over the years so many profoundly moving stories of people who say that this series, not due to me, but let's say Naoko Takeuchi and her team of writers, I have heard people say that the stories and, well, yes, the team's creation of the stories has helped them through some very difficult times in their lives. And I've heard that many, many, many times. And I find that very moving and gratifying to be part of a team that has shared those stories. Um, yeah, yeah, that's really meaningful and special.
It's the same case with me, just because I know that Sailor Moon had a big part in helping me feel comfortable with my sexuality growing up.
I'm so glad you shared that, and it's not the first time I've heard that, which was one of the first stories I heard, and I went, really? Wow, that's incredible. For well, anime, any story on screen or in theater, to help someone through a challenging time or to illuminate something about their circumstance in a way that maybe they hadn't considered before, I think is such an honor and such a gift. And thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that.
So, and one other recording question I had was when I talked to Linda, Katie, and Susan, they all had their own kind of stories about what it was like to work with Nicole.
Well, I can share with you my first experience of Nicole, which was when I was called into audition for this. So they had started recording with Tracy Moore, who recorded the first handful of episodes, and my understanding is that there were creative differences there. So Tracy left, and they were trying to find Sailor Moon, and I was in Toronto with a couple of young friends visiting from Calgary, teenagers, and I was about to take them to the Hockey Hall of Fame. And I got this call from my agent, Terri. There's this series called Sailor Moon. They want to see you for this. It's about superheroes, girls. And I'm like, oh, that sounds really interesting. Okay. And I said, okay, well, let me know when the audition is. And my agent said, it's now. I said, now? Now? I'm going to the Hockey Hall of Fame with my young friends. No, they need to see now. So that was Nicole. So I showed up and they're on a timeline. So they put me through the mill and gave me direction and had me doing this and that and the next thing. And it felt like it went well. And I had a lot of fun working with them. And I left and went to the Hockey Hall of Fame, and I got a call from my agent, Terri. They want you to do the role. And I said, that's fantastic. That's great. I look forward to that. Okay, let me know when we start recording. And she said, now. I said, are you kidding me? I'm in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Anyway, we started recording that night. We literally started recording that night. So it was from the phone call to the audition, to the phone call you got it, to showing up back in the studio that night. And that was Nicole. So I would say of Nicole, I really appreciate her. She's a very emotive person, and I appreciate her passion and her caring. I always felt she really cared about the show and was always under the gun. And I don't know how much of that was her and her scheduling, or it was really the deadlines that were required by the distributor and the producers. I don't know. It wasn't really my job to know that at the time, but I do know that Nicole really cared, and we worked to a very tight timeline all the time. It was rush, rush, rush all the time. So, yeah, it was a fun experience. Yeah.
I do think it's cool that you've not just you, but other members of the original cast have gotten a lot of interaction with the new cast as well, like at conventions and all that.
Yeah, I always enjoy meeting new people. Sometimes those circumstances, it's really busy, so you don't get as much time to connect and schmooze as you'd like. But yeah, I always enjoy meeting subsequent cast members and because we share a similar experience. At least, we're sort of connected in some way.
And there was for people that aren't aware, I did want to ask about that story that I've seen you share about how you helped this little girl that
No,
passed away.
Janelle, did you want me to share that story? Yeah, so when I was recording Sailor Moon, I got a phone call from a cousin in Calgary where I grew up saying that she had this young friend who was 6 years old at the time who was ill and um, asked if I would be willing to call this little girl. And I said, of course I would. So I did. And I ended up speaking to her mother, Tanis, and to Janelle on the phone. And as requested, I spoke a little bit as Serena Sailor Moon, and she was 6, and I could recognize the voice, of course, and we sort of had a brief conversation that way, and then I switched into my Terri voice, and that was me as an actor playing that role, and she knew it. She was so much smarter than I was. She was such a bright little kid, and we just had this connection, this amazing conversation. And at some point in the conversation, she said to me, I think I was talking to her mom, and then I went back to her, and she said, I just felt something in my eyes. And mommy said, those are happy tears. Oh, it was just such a profound moment and connection with this little girl. And it was the beginning of a friendship. So I went to Calgary where my family lived and I visited her and met her family. And they're just salt of the earth, beautiful family who had a really big challenge in their life. Their daughter was very seriously ill, and they just did everything they could. Her mom had been a nurse, and so took excellent care of her, and they lived as normal a life as possible, knowing that um, her years might be limited. And so part of a gift to me was they came to Toronto and they came to a recording session of Sailor Moon. And that was really honestly one of the highlights for me, that my young friend would come and share in this, and that she had such a love for the series, and I'm told by her family that it made a difference in her life. And as with, I think, any of us who are ill, whether it's kind of a temporary illness or a long-term illness um or more, when we have things to look forward to, it not only can give us a bit of a respite from the day-to-day challenges that we live with, but also my understanding is that it can actually affect our physical health and help us improve our health to some degree, whether it be mental or physical. So anyway, it was a very interesting journey for me, and Janelle did pass away, but she was beloved by so many people, and including a very famous football coach from Toronto who flew to Calgary to give her eulogy because she had worked with him, I think fundraising for a hospital, and he was so incredibly impressed with her because she was an impressive, mature, wise, humble human being who really made a big difference in this world before she took her leave. So I'm forever grateful to have known her. Yeah.
Those tie into my final question for every interview is always asking, what do you want your legacy to be?
What do I want my legacy to be? Wow. You just get to the big questions, don't you? Good on you. Um, you know, I think I mentioned to you that I thought maybe I'd go to law school at one point in my life. And and I took this detour. And I think it was also partly after Sailor Moon that I started thinking, I'm really happy to be part of the storytelling team here. And I also want to write my own stories. I want to talk about people I've met, situations that I've seen. And why do I want to do that? Why would I want to go to law school? Why would I want to act? Why would I want to write stories? Why would I want to direct? It it kind of has boiled down to the same thing in my life. Why do I do anything? Why do I volunteer? Why do I reach out to people? Why do I show up? And it's because I want to make a difference. I want to be an engaged human being on this incredible planet. I want to lift other people up. I want to show up as my best self. So I'm very open to learning and continuing to learn. And I hope I will till the day I die. And I also want to recognize that I have been very privileged, not only professionally, but just in life. I mean, being born in Canada is a privilege in itself. So I have had many opportunities in my life, professionally, personally, socially, and it's maybe a bit of a cliche, but I really believe that to those, I'm paraphrasing, I don't even know who said this, but to those who are given much, much is asked of them. And I'd agree to that. So I have a family. I give to my family. They give to me. I have some dear, dear friends. They're family of the heart. And we have a reciprocal respect and love for each other and support for each other. And I would love for that to just keep expanding through storytelling, writing, directing, volunteer work, activism. Maybe talking with you, maybe you or I say something that sort of twigs an idea in each other that helps us on our journeys and may help others. So it's a bit of a rambling response, but I think you get the general idea. Try and make a difference in a positive way.
Well, thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure, Chris. Thank you for some great questions and for your lovely vintage shirt and a bit of a little trip down memory lane. And thanks for sharing what you did. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Hope you have a good rest of your day then.
Yeah, you too. Take care.